For 3 days, someone lived inside a farmhouse with 6 corpses. They fed the cows. They ate the family's bread. They slept there. 70 kilometers north of Munich, in the Bavarian countryside, stood a farmstead called Hinterkaifeck. The name meant, behind Kaifeck, describing its location about a kilometer north of the small hamlet, hemmed in by dense woods. The farm had been built around 1863, and by 1922 it belonged to Andreas Gruber, aged 63, and his wife Cecilia, 72. Living with them was their widowed daughter Viktoria Gabriel, 35, and her 2 children, 7-year-old Cecilia and 2-year-old Joseph. The family's history was not simple. Cecilia the elder had gained the farm through a divorce settlement decades earlier. Viktoria's husband, Karl Gabriel, had been reported killed at the Battle of Arras in December 1914. And in 1915, Andreas and Viktoria, father and daughter, were convicted in the Nürnberg District Court of incest. He served a year in prison. She served 1 month. In 1919, Viktoria told her lover, a neighbor named Lorenz Schlittenbauer, that her infant son Joseph had been conceived through her father's continued abuse. Schlittenbauer reported it, then withdrew the complaint, then reasserted it under oath at trial. Andreas walked free. Schlittenbauer went on to adopt the boy as his own. By March 1922, a new maid had joined the household. Her name was Maria Baumgartner, 44. She had worked at Hinterkaifeck for exactly 1 day before the end came. On the night of Friday, March 31, 1922, Viktoria, her daughter Cecilia, and her parents were led one by one into the barn through the stable. Each was killed with blows from a mattock, a farm tool used for digging. The killer then walked into the house and used the same weapon on Joseph, asleep in his bassinet, and on Maria in her bedroom. No one came looking right away. Coffee sellers knocked on the door on April 1 and got no answer. They noticed the machine room gate standing open and simply left. The Gruber's granddaughter missed school. The family missed Sunday, Massachusetts. A mechanic arrived on April 4 to fix an engine, waited an hour, then did the repair alone and went home. It was Schlittenbauer, the same neighbor tied to the family's darkest secret, who finally organized a search that afternoon. He sent his son and stepson to the farm first. When the boys came back saying they'd seen no one, Schlittenbauer went himself, with 2 other neighbors, Michael Pohl and Jacob Sigel. In the barn, they found 4 bodies. Inside the house, they found the other 2. By the time investigators from Munich arrived, led by Inspector George Rain Gruber, the scene had already been picked apart, literally. Onlookers had moved the bodies. Someone had cooked a meal in the kitchen. The court physician, Johann Baptist Aumüller, performed autopsies inside the barn itself the next day, on April 5. He confirmed the mattock as the murder weapon, though the tool wasn't even at the scene yet. One detail from the autopsy stayed with investigators longer than any other: the younger Cecilia had survived the initial attack. She had lain in the straw for hours afterward, alive, pulling her own hair out in tufts. Robbery was the first theory. Investigators questioned traveling craftsmen and vagrants from the surrounding villages. Then a large sum of money turned up untouched inside the house, and that theory collapsed. What replaced it was stranger. Someone had stayed. The cattle had been fed after the murders. The bread in the kitchen was gone. Meat had been recently cut from the pantry. Whoever had swung that mattock had not fled into the night. They had stayed on the property, moving among the dead, tending the animals like a hired hand. The unsettling part isn't only what happened after the murders, it's what happened before them, and how much of it the family already knew. 6 months earlier, the household's original maid, Crescens Rieger, had quit. The commonly repeated reason is that she'd heard footsteps in the attic and become convinced the house was haunted. In March 1922, Andreas found a Munich newspaper on the property that he had no memory of buying, and it turned out no one nearby subscribed to that paper at all. Days before the murders, he told neighbors he'd found footprints in the fresh snow, leading out of the woods to a door with a broken lock, the door to the machine room. That same night, the family heard footsteps in the attic again. Andreas searched. He found no one. He told several people about all of it. He refused every offer of help. He never reported any of it to the police. There's one more thread, second-hand but persistent. A school friend of the young Kazilia later said the girl had told her that her mother, Viktoria, fled the farm the night before the murders after a violent argument with Andreas, and was found again in the forest only hours later. So the mattock that killed the family had been sitting in their own barn. The killer, whoever it was, seemed to know the property, know the routines, know exactly where to find the tool and where to lead each victim so the others wouldn't hear. And still, when the weapon itself was finally located, it wasn't in the barn where the first 4 died. It surfaced later, during the farm's demolition, hidden in the attic, the same attic where the footsteps had been heard for months. A penknife turned up separately, buried in the barn hay. Investigators built a list of suspects. Arrests were made, more than once. No one was ever convicted. The case was formally closed in 1955, without resolution. Less than a year after the murders, the farmhouse itself was torn down, an attempt, it seems, to erase the place rather than just the crime. It was during that demolition that the bloodied mattock and the penknife surfaced, tools that had apparently been sitting inside the structure the entire time investigators searched it. In their place today stands a small concrete monument, the Hinterkaifeck and marking roughly where the farm once stood. What's left of the case is a house that no longer exists, a weapon that turned up 9 months too late, and a farmer who told his neighbors about strange footprints in the snow and then went back inside anyway. Whoever stayed in that house for 3 days, eating the family's bread and feeding their cattle, was never named. You're left standing where the house used to be, looking at a monument instead of a crime scene.